Greetings and welcome to this episode of Coping Together. I am Charlotte Melton, and this is Shawonda Henderson, our peer specialist with the Reflections Recovery Program. We're gathering together today to talk about some significant losses you may have seen in the news recently. They include former Miss USA Chesley Christ, actor Moses J. Mosley from The Walking Dead, and Regina King's son, Alexander Jr. All of these losses were of individuals dying by suicide in their young 30s. I know, Shawonda, you share in our workshop as well about another young Black individual who lost their life to suicide, Keith McCants. And as a footballer, one of the really great points you make is that people assumed he was okay because he was rich and famous. And in the articles I'm reading about these other individuals, they were high functioning. So what maybe connects for you on, as a suicide prevention advocate, what are we missing here?
The thing that we're missing is the fact that we assume that because of one's social status, that they're okay. They are, this is a famous person, or they're rich, and we just assume that these people are okay. Like, what could possibly be wrong? You're rich, you're famous, not realizing that the same love, the same care and attention that they're pouring into others, they need that same love and care and attention back. And we miss that. So we're failing people because of the status that they're on. And that's something that we have to bring to attention.
You are giving me goosebumps because it's so personal. You take something so Hollywood level and make it personal. I think you make a great point as well about our assumptions, especially with what we see, whether it's through traditional media or social media or even their own direct social media. You get the A side of the tape. I mean, cassette tapes. I'm sorry, I'm going to generationally distance myself from watchers here, but you pick the best side of things that you want to present to people. So sometimes what we see isn't the whole picture.
Exactly, because we are held to a standard. We are held to this position as a leader, and we have to keep that image up, So we fail as husbands or wives or children or co-workers or bosses, and we fail to notice certain things. We fail to look for signs. We just assume. So we don't notice the signs that I would notice with my regular friend, or someone, just the normal neighbor, or someone like that, that I would notice with them. But if I look at Charlotte being the leader, I don't look at, maybe she's not well. I don't notice the little things that I should notice with you. So I failed to say, how are you doing today, Charlotte? Is everything okay? I noticed a little, So we don't notice that. We don't notice that because we are under the assumption that because they are rich and famous, and we can go all the way back to, what's the famous actor, Mrs. Doubtfire?
Oh, Robin Williams.
Robin Williams. He made everyone laugh. We assumed that he was just the happiest person in the world, when he was truly hurting. The same laughter that he shared with us, he wasn't getting that in return. Something was missing, something we missed. So we're missing the mark with people that are on a certain status. And that's something that we have to look at. We have to look at that.
You're so sharp because you're coming from two angles. You're coming from our perspectives on how we view them and their need for our support, but also in how they are having to communicate and buffer their asking for help. That there's this expectation that I'm okay. So I don't want people who are dependent on me to question that. And that's in the business setting. And then you've talked about like at home too. So you're touching on also, this status expectation is not just something that exists in Hollywood. It's not just up to the stars or the famous or the players, but it hits everyone.
It hits everyone. It hits everyone because we don't want, and the reason why a lot of people fail to ask for help when they're on that status level is because, like you said, well, they're looking at me. I don't want to change what they think of what I'm doing or the position that I hold. It's like a pastor.
Yeah.
If he's suffering, I don't want to share, I don't want to, I'm afraid to share that with my congregation because maybe they might look at God in a different view. If he's suffering, then who am I? So a lot of times they fail to ask for that help because of the status that they're on, because people are watching. So that's why it's important to know the signs and to call attention and bring awareness to what's going on with that individual so we don't lose our loved ones unnecessarily.
At all levels, head of that household, head of the congregation, head of your community, or just leader of your own life. We all have those responsibilities that can and seem like barriers. So I thank you for touching on that. There also can be some cultural influences. And I know sometimes that can be a factor in whether a few people feel permission to ask out for help. Is this traditionally something we talk about in my family, in my community? Um, but to honor these individuals that we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, the lives lost to suicide in Black Americans is increasing year by year. It's time to make sure that we do include that conversation and honor that there's a power to talking and we want to hear.
Yes, and in our culture, and I can speak on the Black culture because there was always a cliche in the Black community. And I can remember growing up that Black people didn't die by suicide. What is that? So it's time that we bring more mental health awareness to the Black community because it is happening, it is alive, and it is real. And it's time that we bring awareness because of the stigma around suicide and around mental health. It has not been mentioned enough in the Black community. And I can speak on it because I can remember it growing up. I can remember the things that were said, the myths that it's not true. So we have to bring more mental health awareness to the Black community because when things like this happen, just these three recent deaths were all people of color, and people are like in shock because it wasn't heard of in the Black community. So it's time for us to bring awareness.
And before we lose somebody, when we can support and uplift them, because you've talked so much about family connections and congregation and support, and all of that exists as part of our wellness formula. So it's all necessary for us to thrive, but seeing that need and knowing that even with this expectation of my status or my position or my cultural expectations, that there's a power in asking for help, and maybe somebody is ready, who honors you and excited by your life to care for you. So that leads me into what we talked about earlier. But when we were talking about having this conversation is what do people do? What should I do? And you're talking about like a cultural change and understanding. That's big. We're going to talk about where we start today, and with the person I'm caring about. So what does somebody do when we're worried about somebody?
When we're worried about someone, you have to learn to not be afraid to ask. It's not important of how you ask, but what's most important is that you ask. Are you okay? We
Check
have
in on
to
them.
you have to check in. You have to check in and say, how are you? How are you feeling? Because we lose them when we assume that they're okay. The same love, the same support that they're giving you, they need that back. They need that back.
Yeah.
So we have
Oh,
to stop assuming. We have to stop with the bystander effect. Oh, they're okay. Or someone's already, they're okay. So we have to start checking in. We have to start checking in on no matter the status, whether they're here or whether they're here. We have to start showing more attention and bringing awareness to what's going on with people. People are hurting, things are going on, and we have to start checking in.
mm. And you bring us back to that warmth you started us with of give them the love that they're giving you. So feed them the way that they feed us, and that honors them. And it's exciting and empowering, because the loss of these individuals is significant and we want to honor their experiences, but I'm grateful that we can use this as an opportunity for conversation for someone else who might be suffering today. Or someone else who might be worried today. And we have a resource that you can reach out to just for information. It's youaralifeguard.org, and it has risk signs and warning signs. It has some advocacy specifically geared to youth, but some great global facts and myths, as well as hotlines and resources. So we'll include that as we share this. And then we have some workshops that tie in as well. Shawonda, as you can tell, is so articulate about suicide prevention because she facilitates our QPR, which is question, persuade, refer. And as that states, is when you honor and respect somebody, check in because they may be hurting.
Yes, yes, check in. If you're not aware of the signs, we have, like Charlotte mentioned, you are a lifeguard, which teaches you about the signs, warning signs about suicide. And also, I am the QPR instructor. And if you would love to learn about suicide, you can go to Eventbrite or meetup.com, and there you will find the trainings for QPR, which is question, persuade, and refer. And you can come to one of the trainings and find out, what am I looking for? What am I looking for? What should I ask? What are the questions? So it gives you, it empowers you. The training empowers you to ask the question.
Well, thank you for an empowering conversation, Shawonda. And thank you for tuning in. As we've talked about, those resources are available, and we're very grateful to be a part of this conversation. And
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Charlotte.
Wishing you all well.
Thank you.